All right, hello and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 128. It was a less than ideal weekend for my teams. These are the episodes that I kind of equally love and hate doing. I hate doing because I hate having to relive the losses that broke my heart. But I also love it because it's kind of therapeutic to talk through what happened, what went wrong, where we go from here, all of those things. So there's going to be quite a bit to get into for that today between the Buckeyes and the Browns. Thanksgiving weekend is always a big football weekend. It's actually probably one of my favorite weekends of the year. I love Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. I just like the relaxed nature of the holiday. I also just really enjoy the food. And I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving, enjoyed it with some family, friends, with whoever, enjoyed hopefully some time off work. I know that's always nice after a busy year to kind of slow down a little bit this time of year. So I hope everyone enjoyed it and had a good time watching football all week as well. You know, quite a few Thanksgiving Day games, the first ever Black Friday game, which I liked having a game on Friday because it's always good to have football on. But I guess I wish it wasn't the Jets, and it might have made it like a little bit more fun. But in general, I didn't mind having a Black Friday game. I think when you have these weekends of this relaxed downtime, it's always good to have more games on. So I definitely enjoyed myself and hope you all did as well. So let's get into it. Before I discuss Ohio State, Michigan, which is the first big topic I want to get into, I did want to mention that I got to go to the Cavs game this weekend against the Lakers and see LeBron play, which, as all of you know, who listen to this, he is my hero, my king, my legend, my GOAT. And I was so excited to get to go and see him. It's been a little while, I think, since I've gotten to go to Cavs Lakers game in Cleveland. So it was great to see him play. It wasn't, one of his more spectacular performances, although I did bet for him to have a triple-double, which he did not have. But it was still fun. I think I had this weird feeling when he ran out on the court for warm-ups, and this is going to sound really dramatic because it is, because I can be dramatic about LeBron. But I was literally tearing up when he ran out for warm-ups, because it really hit me that, like, I don't know how many more times I'm going to get to watch him play in person. He only comes to Cleveland, usually like once a year. And I don't always get to go. I don't know how many more years he's going to be playing. And I assume, in his final season, whenever that is, those tickets are going to be incredibly expensive and hard to get. So I don't know how many more times I will see him play. And it really hit me in that moment. It was making me very emotional. And I was like, you are watching him warm up. You need to calm down. But I couldn't in that moment. I was just flashing back to the last 21 years of his career and all the memories I have watching him play. It's always just special and something I'll always cherish forever. So that was really lovely. He got quite an ovation, obviously, throughout the game. Warm-ups, he runs out just every time he does anything, lots of cheering. They also did a little video compilation for him, and he's a little bit over 39,000 points all time now. So they did kind of throughout the years video for him, which was really nice. He did the little hand heart to the crowd, which is something that Taylor Swift also does. So I was also equally emotional for that moment. But yeah, it was really cool, and always fun to have him home where he belongs, in the city of Cleveland. All right, so let's get into the less exciting topics. My football team's losing. So Ohio State lost to Michigan, third straight year in a row. 30-24 was the final score. Obviously, it felt like a battle throughout the entirety of the game. Felt like Ohio State always had a chance at it. And I think there were certain moments of the game where I could say one team felt like the better team, and then it kind of would flip over. Like, there was one drive that Ohio State had on offense where they just ran the ball down their throats. Like, they really, really went for it, and they kind of went away from that in some of the the later drives following that, but it felt like in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, they can really do this. And then things just kind of fell apart and they got a little bit less aggressive. So definitely unfortunate to have that happen the third year in a row. I think some of the bigger reasons for this loss were, one, I just don't know if Kyle McCord is the caliber of quarterback that can play in games like this. It didn't feel like we necessarily had the better quarterback in that game, and that is something that Ohio State typically has for the last decade, I would say, having the best quarterback out there on that field, and it felt like they were at a bit of a disadvantage for it. He has some really brilliant moments, and then he'll just have some really bad moments as well, and you just can't have those moments when you're playing in these high stakes type games. I think another big factor in the game too, and I am someone who's always going to put more either blame or reward towards the people that are actually playing on the field over coaching. You guys know that about me and kind of how I analyze things, but it is hard to ignore what Ryan Day has consistently done in these big games, which is really not be aggressive in the moments where you have to make these big decisions. So there was a moment in the first half where the Buckeyes could kick a 52-yard field goal or they could go for it on fourth down. And Ryan Day made the decision to kick a 52-yard field goal, which he ended up missing. And I feel like people were like, oh yeah, just take the points. And I just don't understand that thinking necessarily with a college kicker, because a 52-yard field goal for a college kicker is extremely hard. Even in the 40s, sometimes that is hard for college kickers. Like, it is not a guarantee like it feels like it is for a lot of NFL kickers. It's just a different level of play, and I really, really hated settling for it there. And then once you miss that kick, it really just shifts all the momentum over, because everything you did in that drive kind of felt like a waste then. So I really would have preferred for him to be more aggressive in moments like that and go for it, especially when the interim head coach for Michigan is being aggressive in those moments. They went for it on quite a few fourth downs and got them. And it didn't feel like we were applying that same energy, and that gave them so much momentum, so much confidence. When you hit those fourth downs, you feel like you can just take the ball down the field then. So I think those two factors, I would say, level of quarterback play and lack of aggression in coaching decisions, was the difference in this football game. I'll talk about some of this in the mailbag questions at the end, because I got quite a few questions about just Ryan Day and where the team goes from here. But the answer is, I don't know. There's a lot of decisions that they have to make at this point, and there's always a lot of movement in college football these days, whether it's with the transfer portal or with coaches themselves. So there are directions they could go. It just depends on what they feel about what they did this year, if they can correct it, or if it truly needs to be something that is a bigger change. So I will get into that more, like I said, once I get to the mailbag questions. Okay, so on to the Browns game. Another loss. The Browns lost to the Broncos 29-12. Ugh, that's an ugly score. That score actually almost looks worse than how the game felt. I feel like that's a really ugly score to look at. I believe it was a scoregami. I think I saw that on Twitter. So there's one positive of the score, if it's not the 12 points that the Browns ended up putting on the board. So a couple things just going through, I feel like, what killed the Browns in this game. One, I would say, would be the turnovers, obviously. This is something that the Browns have struggled with all season, is turning the ball over. There was that direct snap that Harrison Bryant fumbled in the first quarter. There was the Elijah Moore fumbling the ball that gave Denver the ball with really good field position. I think that's the hardest part with these turnovers, is when they happen in these situations where it's giving the opposing offense incredible field position, almost handing them a score in a way. If, it's not a pick six they run back or a fumble they run back, it's giving them the ball on, the 20, 30, 40 yard line, and they're, right in there having an easy path to getting a score. There was also the PJ sack with I think like 8 minutes left in the game where he fumbled it, and that kind of really sealed the deal. Felt like things were pretty much done at that point. And those definitely, I would say, were the biggest factor in what turned this game around. And I think there were 10 points overall that the Broncos scored off of turnovers alone. Whether it was right after a turnover or whatnot. But that's a quite a significant number to be giving to a team like that when you're on the road, especially in their environment, in their house. You just really can't have that. And I think that was one of the bigger differences in this game. Both teams had, I think, the same number of penalties, 8 penalties. It was roughly the same yardage. The Browns had 8 penalties for 66 yards, but it just felt like some of their penalties came in crucial moments. Like it would come on a play where they got a really good stop on defense, or they had an incredible gain on offense, and that was just taken away from them because of the penalty. And you can't have that either, especially on the road. The same thing with turnovers. It's penalties and turnovers. Those definitely kill you at home too, but on the road, I feel like it just gives them so much momentum. It gives the crowd so much excitement and momentum that it really it set them back to have those penalties happen in the moments that they did. Injuries was another one that obviously out of their control in a lot of ways. And it's just been the name of the game this season. I think this has been a pattern across the league. It's not just a Browns thing, but it does feel like it's hit the Browns extremely hard between losing Nick Chubb early, losing your starting quarterback, losing Conklin back in week 1 or whatever. It just feels like it's been a constant pile on as we have gone throughout the season. In this game, we had DTR get hit pretty hard. He was like bleeding from his mouth. He was in concussion protocol. It seems like they're monitoring him still, and they don't have any actual update on whether or not he's going to play this weekend. So it's going to, maybe be him if he is able to, but the other choice is go back to PJ Walker, or you elevate Joe Flacco to the active roster and you decide to start Joe Flacco. I would personally like to go the Joe Flacco route if we have those two options right there, but it was really unfortunate to see DTR go down the way he did there, because I actually felt like he was playing really well and was showing some really promising signs, especially just building on what he did in Pittsburgh, where it felt like a much more reserved DTR. They really opened up things for him more, and he was really starting to shine and show some really nice throws that he just didn't even have the opportunity to make in the game against Pittsburgh. So I was excited about what we were seeing from him, and it felt like it was trending upwards, and then just kind of all fell apart, obviously, once he had to be taken out of the game and PJ had to come in. So that was pretty brutal. Miles also got hurt in the game. He luckily had everything looked at today and is going to be day to day for his injury. So thank God it's nothing, season ending or something that's going to keep him out even for 3-4 weeks. That would just be really brutal to deal with at this point. So happy that he is just day to day, and it seems like all signs are pointing to him being okay for the Rams game this upcoming weekend. Amari Cooper also is going to be day to day. He had a rib injury in the game. I mean, these are our top players. Like these are players that are used consistently throughout games. Like Amari Cooper is the best wide receiver, even though he didn't really have the best game. Myles Garrett is the best player on the defense. And so it is brutal to be losing these players. You also already went into the game without Denzel Ward, probably your best player in the secondary, who's been having an excellent year. And it really showed that he was not out there, because I think Greg Newsome really struggled to defend on the outside. He struggled quite a bit with Cortland Sutton in a couple moments. And I just feel like he might just be better for the slot and shouldn't be an outside corner, which is fine. There's roles for everyone, but it just makes you realize how important Denzel Ward is and how talented he really is. I feel like he takes unnecessary flack sometimes from the fan base, and I don't quite understand it, because he is one of the best at what he does and has been really valuable this season. Corners don't always get talked about unless they're doing something really bad. I feel like you hear the names of corners more when they make one really bad blown coverage and, a touchdown is blamed on them. I don't think you hear about corners as much when they're just doing their job and doing it well. I guess the only other time you would hear about them is if they're making like an interception or a showy play like that. But what's really important about a guy like Denzel is what he is doing every single snap out there and the way that he is doing his job well. That's not going to get called on a broadcast or not talked about in the same way as, him making an interception are the little things that he does and not having those blown coverages like we saw a couple times from Greg. So definitely missing him and hoping he'll be able to be back. So that was, that always has a big impact on the game. You have to change what you're doing in a lot of ways, especially, a guy like Amari Cooper, who's such a big part of your offense. Like, that's changing what your game plan is in general when you don't have him. We don't have wide receivers forever that can, just step in the way that Amari can. So it was unfortunate to watch all of those things happen and just kind of come together in this moment that felt like, okay, this is just not going to be the Browns' day. Okay, but what I do want to say, I guess, that's, not to do with all the things that I would blame this loss on. The one thing that everyone seems to be blaming this loss on is, once again, the play calling, which I didn't engage on it really online today because I'm just tired of having this conversation week in and week out. Last week, everyone's crowning Stefanski Coach of the Year. This week, they want him fired and never to call a play for the Cleveland Browns again. It is just so up and down. I am really struggling with watching everyone ride this wave week in and week out. I don't think it was a, top Stefanski game by any means. I think there were some moments that maybe, he could have done something differently. But what I really don't understand is this conversation about the ratio of run and pass plays that this offense has every single game. The Browns run the ball more than any team in the league. They still run the ball quite a bit. Maybe during this game, they could have run the ball a couple more times and I would have been perfectly happy with that. But I don't think it was this huge disparity that they should have run the ball like 20 more times than they did. I genuinely think that does not make any sense for what they were doing on offense, for what the defense was giving them. I just feel like people have such a misconception of what the Browns offense actually looks like on the field compared to what it looks like in everyone's minds and what it should be looking like. The Browns went down 14-0 early in that game. So they couldn't go to the run quite a bit at that point because you were down 14-0. Any play caller in this league is going to tell you that you should be passing at that point in time. You are down by 2 scores and you need to come back from that. And you're going to do that by passing and getting bigger gains because it's much harder to do that by running the ball. So I think people are forgetting that part of it, that it matters, what the score is at any point in the game. That really dictates a lot of what you can do on offense. They also make decisions based on the looks that they're getting from the defense. And by all accounts, the Broncos were very much coming into this game saying, we are going to stop the run and we are going to force DTR to throw the ball, which I don't blame them for having that plan based on what they saw in Pittsburgh. DTR was struggling a little bit with throwing, so they were like, hey, we're going to stop the run. We're going to make the rookie quarterback throw the ball. Luckily, actually, DTR was having success doing that in, a lot of ways during the first half of the game before he got injured. That was going to hopefully eventually allow them to open up the run a little bit more, as DTR was proving to this Broncos defense that they were going to have to defend them a little bit differently. You can't just run the ball into certain defensive coverages and expect to have success. That you are picking and choosing what situations you're doing that in based on what you are seeing from them. So I, obviously think that the DTR injury was really unfortunate because it probably changed a lot of what the game plan was and a lot of the way the game was trending. But in general, from what I saw in the first half, from what they were doing with him, I don't think it was that crazy for them to have the ratio of pass to run that they did. I think it made quite a bit of sense. I think the other thing that is bothersome about the way people talk about just not even the Browns run game, but just the run game in general is just focusing on yards per carry and thinking that tells the entire story of what a running back did, or the entire story of what the Browns are doing as an offense and why those decisions are made at certain points throughout the game. You cannot just look at yards per carry and say, well, they had, 4 yards per carry or 6 yards per carry or whatever that number may be, and say, oh, well, that means they should have run the ball more. That doesn't paint the story of what you watch play in and play out throughout the game. So I hate just referencing that and going to a box score stat to tell me what the team should have done more in a game. You really just actually have to watch what they're doing and not just read those numbers at the end. I think the other thing, which I briefly mentioned, was they really did start to open up things more for DTR this week, which is what everyone wanted after last week. Everyone was screaming after the Steelers game about how Kevin Stefanski kept things a little bit too guarded, and they wanted him to open things up more for DTR, and that the offense needed to evolve a little bit more. And he did that, and it was actually starting to work, like I said. And so I think it's crazy that one week you're asking for one thing and the next week you're asking for the complete opposite. It's like, I don't think he can win in anyone's mind sometimes, which is frustrating because it feels like, I've said this many times, a lot of people want to be right about their opinion about Kevin Stefanski more than they want to enjoy a Browns game and enjoy the wins. Like last week, some people couldn't enjoy it because they were so upset about him not opening the offense up more during like the third quarter of the game until he opened it up for him a little bit more in the last drive of the game. Like, the Browns beat the Steelers. Enjoy that game. You don't have to get upset about Kevin Stefanski every single time. And I don't think you have to, blame the entirety of this loss on his play calling when there were so many factors that went into the reason the Browns kind of failed in this game. Like I said, I probably could have handled a few more run plays, but I don't think it was this giant disparity that most everyone else feels like it was. So they have a really good chance of bouncing back next week against the Rams. The Rams have been playing a little bit better and have had some good moments, so I don't think it's going to be an easy matchup by any means. I don't think that's going to be a hard environment to play in, which is probably good. LA has a lot of road fans, and I don't think it's as dedicated of a crowd as you were finding there in Denver. So I think they have a real chance to bounce back and get their 8th win of the season. And this team consistently throughout the year has bounced back after having a bad game and having some adversity. They have constantly shown up and done well. So I am choosing to believe that this team is going to adjust to what they did. Hopefully once they figure out who the heck is going to be playing at quarterback, they can also have a better idea of what they need to do. But based on everything they've shown us this year, they are a really resilient group. So I think they'll take a lot of learnings from what they did here. And by the way, the Broncos are on quite a run right now. This was their 5th straight win. They have actually a decently tough schedule, I think, still left, but they've been on a really impressive run. Sean Payton has done a nice job turning things around there with Russell Wilson. So I don't think that was like a bad team that we lost to there. I think that was a really decent football team playing in a hard road environment. So would have loved to get it, obviously, but a lot of factors in play there. Okay, so let's talk NFL or New York Times playoff simulator real quick before I get into the mailbag questions. So I ran through it a couple times again with the updated loss against the Broncos. Most scenarios still have the Browns anywhere between like a 65 to 70% chance of making the playoffs. And this was the New York Times one. So I know there's a million other simulations out there that you can look at. This one specifically had it around that percentage for the most part. Obviously the Steelers and Ravens winning made things very annoying this past week. The Bills losing to the Eagles, I think actually probably helped the team a little bit more. just because it was another AFC team that lost. The Eagles can keep winning. That's fine by me. I think the Bills are probably out of it at this point. I think the Bengals are also probably out of it at this point, which is crazy. If you told people that before the season started that those two teams would be out of it, you would think they were lying, but that is where it is. I think the Texans losing again was also helpful. So the Browns are absolutely still in it and have full control of their destiny if they take care of the games they need to take care of. I think they should definitely be winning in LA. They should be winning against the Bears. They should be winning against the Jets. I think they should be winning in the last week against the Bengals, led by Jake Browning. There are 4 games right there that I strongly believe that this team should be winning. I think the Jags game is going to be tough. I think the Texans game is going to be tough. But the rest of those, I think, they are in real control here of what they're going to be come playoff time. So just got to take care of business this weekend. Okay, mailbag questions quickly. A lot of Flacco questions. Should Flacco start in LA? Should the Browns start Flacco? Just a bunch of questions for that. If DTR can go, I think you go with DTR. I like what he gives you in the sense of mobility that Flacco is not going to be able to give you at 38 or however old he is. I think he started to shine enough in this game that I would like to continue with him. So I would go DTR, then I would go Flacco, and then I would go PJ last. I think I am good on the PJ Walker situation at this point in time. Do you think it's time to part ways with Ryan Day? Mixed up those words there. Like I mentioned before, I think it's a tough question because I think a lot can be blamed on the quarterback as well. But I do think Ryan Day losing the 3rd year straight to Michigan is going to start having a real effect on the conversations around him. I think it really depends on who else you would be able to bring in. Like I said, there's a lot of movement in college football, so I'm sure they're trying to see who out there would be interested in it, because I think you only do it if it's someone you really believe in and feel like this is the guy that you want to bring in. But yeah, I think like a huge part of it is, what McCord has been this year. I think almost what's more damning for Ryan Day is the 2 Michigan losses with CJ Stroud. After seeing the quarterback that he is in the NFL, that they weren't able to get it done with CJ is really unfortunate. And I think that almost looks worse for him than what happened with McCord, because I think McCord is just a lesser quarterback in a way. Another kind of related question, Day, McCord, or neither, who goes, assuming Ohio State doesn't make the playoffs? I don't think I've heard any rumors of like a quarterback coming over in the portal. So I think it would probably be Day first if one of them had to go, although McCord is probably more personally responsible. And I feel bad saying that because like he is a kid and it's not like he isn't talented. He is a talented quarterback. Anyone who is playing at Ohio State is extremely good at what they do. There is just a very, very high level of scrutiny and a very specific level of expectations that are expected at that program. And if, you're not living up to them, your career is going to be short-lived because the expectations are just that high. So I hate talking about a kid like that in that way, but it's just kind of how it goes with programs like that. Last one, if Myles Garrett is out for the season, do the Browns make the playoffs? So I think this question was submitted before we knew that Myles was going to be day-to-day. But let's say that he was going to be out. I would have some serious concerns because I think he is a staple of this defense, extremely massive part of what makes that defensive line so successful and allows other guys to have success. You notice a difference when he's out of the game still. So I think it is very, very important to have him healthy and have him out there. I would, if he was done for the year, like I would be getting close to saying, hey, I just don't know if this is going to happen for us at this point in time. But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening. I very much appreciate it. Like I said, hope you all had a great Thanksgiving, enjoyed watching some football. Browns are going to bounce back this weekend in LA. Got still quite a few weeks of football left, so I hope everyone enjoys it. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you could leave a review or rating, subscribe on YouTube. I would very much appreciate that if you guys would go subscribe there, watch there. Definitely trying to grow that. So thank you guys so much for listening and have a good one. Go Browns.